Hi, and welcome back to another ELA lesson with Miss Maloney. So last week we had worked on constructive response number 2, where you had to define the theme and explain why that was important within that particular story. This week is going to be a little bit similar, but different. It's not that we're just talking about the theme, but we're also going to be talking about how key details play a very important part in your writing. If we could just review real fast about the story element of theme. The theme of the story is the message, lesson, or moral the author wants you to learn. Okay? When you think of theme, you think of the lesson. What have you learned? And some common themes we have is courage, perseverance, honesty, good versus evil, kindness, acceptance, friendship, and love, and the list can go on. There could be many, actually it can be more than one theme within a story, but we're going to find that one essential theme that is going to fit our story for today. So you must ask yourself, what idea stays with you? How did the character grow or change? Another thing that I want you to keep in mind also is the key details. Now we have already talked about main idea and key details and how the key details builds up the story of character, knowing what the setting is, the plot from the exposition to the rising action to the climax to the falling action to the resolution of the story. Having all those pieces together creates the entire scene, the entire vision of what we are reading. So today we're going to break this video up in 3 parts. Number 1, we're going to define what are theme and key details. Number 2, I am going to give you an example of what theme is. And number 3, I'm going to model the constructive response number 3 using theme and key details. So I hope you're ready. But before we get started, we must go over our video norms. Alright, let's grab that piece of paper and a pencil because number 1 says, please always have some paper and a pencil with a good eraser to take great notes. Number 2, listen carefully for there will be questions throughout the entire session. And number 3, pause, reflect, rewind, and review if you need to. And lastly, have fun learning. Now let's get started. So we're going to start off with our standard of today. Last week we were in 3.W1. This week we're still working with 3.W.1, but we're going to be providing reasons that supports the opinion. So you can say to yourself, I can use reasons to support an opinion. So the opinion this time will be you reading the story Carla's Sandwich, and you will be breaking apart what the theme is and the key details to answer the essential question. And we'll get to that later. But before we get there, let's go through our steps again. First thing I'm going to do is define theme and key ideas. I have already defined theme, but do you remember what theme is? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Alright, did you figure it out? Did you remember? Well, when I think of theme, I think of a lesson of what you have learned. Plain and simple, the message or the lesson, moral of the story of the author wants you to learn. Okay? Now that we have that, in order for us to learn about the theme, we must have some key details. What is a key detail? Key details are simply just the important parts of the story. They can have characters, it can describe the setting, but mainly it just tells you everything that you need to know, all the pieces of information to help you explain the main idea or the most important part of the story, which helps us out with the theme. If we don't know all the details of what's going on, who said what characters are doing what thing, if the character had a conflict and they messed up on something, and then they have to learn something, we can't figure out the theme, right? So, let me give you an example of theme. Have you ever watched the movie The Beauty and the Beast? Do you know what the theme was in that movie? Well, let me give you the plot. The plot of Beauty and the Beast is about an arrogant young prince and his castle servants fall under the spell of a wicked witch who turns him into a hideous beast until he learns to love and be loved in return. The spirited, headstrong village girl Belle enters the beast's castle after he imprisons her father, Maurice. With the help of his enchanted servants, including his matronly Mrs. Potts, Belle begins to draw the cold-hearted beast out of his isolation. However, what was the theme? There was a few lessons that was taught in this story, but what was the main theme of the story? So the moral of the story is to not judge people based off of their looks and first impression. True beauty comes from within. So even though Belle was scared and she didn't want to marry the beast because of how he looked, she found out that the beast actually did have a heart. And it's not what was on the outside. What matters was on the inside. Alright, so now that I gave you a theme, a lesson of a story, let's dive into our third part of our video, which is how I'm going to model constructive response number 3. Alright, so constructive response number 3. In the directions, very similar to constructive response number 2 and 1, you will be filling out a graphic organizer on Monday and Tuesday, and then you're going to write your short opinion for the rest of the week. But this time, you are going to read the story Carla's Sandwich to show about the story elements and traditional tale. Remember, our objective today is I can use reasons to support an opinion. And the story elements that we are using today are theme and key details. The writing prompt is essentially the same. What is the theme or message? What key details, story elements, does the author use to communicate the theme and message? So this week we're going to dive a little bit deeper on those key details. As we scroll down, here is my example of a story that I have read. And as you can see, the graphic organizer has changed. So the story structure to communicate the theme about the story Goldilocks and the Three Bears. So you'll put your title here. In this box, you'll put the protagonist, the main characters of the story, versus the antagonist, also a character in the story, but the antagonist is most likely against the protagonist, trying to cause some type of conflict in order for them to get to their resolution. Well, let's see. The plot of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, as you can see, is broken up into 4 boxes. I want you to tell me 4 key events, 4 key details that happen in the story. The first key detail in the Goldilocks and the Three Bears is that she enters into the house to find 3 bowls of porridge. The first one she tastes was too hot, the next one was too cold, but the third one was just right. So she eats it all up. The second detail was Goldilocks finds the 3 different size chairs, where she tries them out and finds the first one too hard, the next one too soft, but then the little one just right. But when she sits on it, she breaks it. The third detail is that the first bed was too hard, the next one was too soft, but the third one was just right, and she curls owners had come home while she was sleeping. And those 3 owners were the mama bear, the papa bear, and the baby bear. Okay, so after I have already identified the title, the protagonist, the antagonist, and I told you 4 key details that are very important in order to make up the story, I need to tell you what the resolution is. How does she solve her problem? The theme of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears is always consider how your actions might affect others. So then after that, you will be doing that yourself with Carla's sandwich. You will then scroll down here where you're going to draft out your ideas. And lastly, you will now construct your response number 3. Where I have identified the theme of always consider how your actions may affect others, but I also had explained what that meant. And then in my second paragraph, I explain my details. So I'll start in details and I explain exactly what happened in the story with the details included. Well, I hope you learned everything you need to know of how to include reasonings to support your opinion. In this case, you are putting key details in your writing to support your constructive response number 3. So let this be the theme for today, meaning the lesson or something that you have learned, and put all the key details of what the video had consist of to use in your writing. So, until next time.